Okay, hello. If you're new to the channel, I use data science to answer questions that are mostly stupid, sometimes serious, and for today's video, I want to take y'all back to almost 10 years ago, to 2013 specifically, because it never has a series swept the world so quickly, nor as completely as Attack on Titan did in the early 2010s. I was in middle school at the time, and this jacket was everywhere. I even remember playing the season 1 opening theme song with my orchestra in a church for a benefit concert. Like, believe me when I tell you, Attack on Titan permeated every level of cultural discussion at the time. If you somehow aren't aware, Attack on Titan is an anime about a society that is trapped within walls to protect themselves from giant humanoid, but human-eating titans. Now, if you saw my animation of manga sales that I uploaded a few days ago, you'll know that Attack on Titan is popular. But there's a little more to the story than that. Obviously, the storytelling and the characters form the core appeal of the series. But there were external circumstances that helped propel it into the international fame and recognition it enjoys today. And in this video, we will be specifically looking at those external circumstances and the data that drives Attack on Titan's popularity. Now, Attack on Titan is an anime, aka a television show in the style of Japanese animation, and it's based off of a manga, which is essentially a Japanese comic. Now, manga is extremely popular in Japan. In 2017, 582 million manga books and magazines were sold in Japan, which is equivalent to each person buying about 5 issues. All that to say, manga is not a niche form of entertainment in any way, shape, or form. There's a good chance that everyone in Japan has read a manga or is at least caught up in the news. Manga is also popular internationally, but we'll get there. So in Japan, manga that are chosen to be adapted into anime are not random. In fact, in a lot of cases, they're usually bestsellers. A lot of Japanese people have probably heard of a series or maybe even be familiar with its storylines before the anime even premieres. That being said, an anime is the best marketing tool a publisher can hope for. What was before a very popular manga can turn into a bestseller and a full-blown franchise with merchandise, toys, the whole shebang. So let's look at this graph. This data is gathered from Oricon, which is essentially like a consulting firm, which is dedicated to collecting data on entertainment in Japan. In 2011 and 2012, Attack on Titan was doing very well. It was selling millions of copies. But in 2013, the year that the anime premiered, its sales jumped from 2.7 million copies to almost 16 million copies sold. Just in Japan, mind you. That's a crazy jump. And if we look at the ranks, so in 2011, it was the 11th best-selling series of all time. The year after that, it was the 15th best-selling series of all time. But the year after that, again in 2013 when the anime premiered, it became the 2nd best-selling series of all time. And each year after that, it was consistently in the top 5, except in 2019 and 2020 when it dropped to 7th and 10th places, respectively. Let's talk about that, though. Why was there such a drop? Well, first of all, the reason that 2013 had so many sales, almost 16 million, and then the years after that sort of leveled out to 5 to 10 million, is that in 2013, lots of people were reading the manga for the first time, so there was a lot of back buying happening, right? People weren't just buying the issues as they were coming out, but people were also buying issues 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. So you have like 3 times the amount of purchases happening as you would in the years following. But also, when the show came out in 2013, it was initially only slated for 1 season. The success of that first season caught everyone off guard, and the animation studio, WIT Studio, scrambled to put together a 2nd season. And that 2nd season didn't premiere until 4 years later in 2017. So the people in charge of the anime were not at all prepared to capitalize on this moment and ride that hype train, if you will, into season 2. And I would suspect that that delay between season 1 and season 2 caused the lull in manga sales that we're seeing post-2013 in this graph. Now, if you think of greenlighting an anime as an investment, which it very much is, then Attack on Titan was supposed to be like a penny stock of sorts. The newly formed WIT Studio could get its feet wet with animation, get a sense of how the process typically works, but they weren't expecting the show to take over the country or anything. And what they got is an anime that ended up taking over the entire world. So for fans outside of Japan, we usually discover a series as an anime first, and then potentially decide to buy the original manga and follow along with the story. Attack on Titan is a particularly interesting case because its publisher, Kodansha, was actually publishing English versions of the story before the anime premiered. Now, data for sales of the English copies isn't as widely available as it is for Japanese copies because, let's be honest, the manga industry is nowhere near as huge outside of Japan as it is inside. But from what information is available, it's clear that the sales of English copies before the anime premiered were disastrously low, even though it was selling millions of copies in Japan at the same time. Then, the first season of the anime premiered, and the series became an international phenomenon. After the series premiered, 6 of the 7 English volumes charted on the New York Times bestseller list. The first volume was on the bestseller list for 81 weeks straight, and the first volume was also #1 on the list of top graphic novels as collected by Nielsen's BookScan. And as the series' popularity rose in the US and other countries, the sales of Japanese copies skyrocketed. So I'm plugging again that manga sales video that I made and uploaded a few days ago. The data from that video was again taken from Oricon, but this was taken from Oricon's weekly top 10 list, right? Now, I know this chart isn't my best work, it's really confusing to look at, but that's because the data was kind of confusing. So Oricon publishes the top 10 most selling manga issues. So that means the only issues of Attack on Titan that I have data for are issues that made it into the top 10. And also there's years worth of data here. It's 2014 until now because Attack on Titan is very much still publishing. So the way you read this chart, each bar is a week. There could have been multiple issues that appeared in the top 10 for a single week. Like you can see December 22nd, 2014, there's 2 issues. There's issue 15 and then issue 15 limited edition. And the white text at the top of each bar tells you what issue the bar is for. Cool? Cool. And the first time Attack on Titan made it to that list was May 5th, 2014 with issue number 13. And the crazy thing is, each issue that came out after issue 13 made it into the top 10 list as well. And it peaked when issue 15 dropped on December 22nd, 2014. And that's the first time that Attack on Titan issue sold more than 1 million copies. Now, what happened in May 2014 that would have caused this rise in sales for Attack on Titan? Well, Toonami picked up the show. So Toonami is a part of the Adult Swim network. It began running Attack on Titan in May 2014, exactly around this time. So Toonami picking up the show meant that millions of people with cable television could watch Attack on Titan in the comfort of their own living room, right? You don't have to boot up Crunchyroll or any other sketchy anime streaming site to watch Attack on Titan. Because let's not forget what Crunchyroll looked like when Attack on Titan was premiering. It is nowhere near as sleek as it is today. Regardless, Toonami began airing Attack on Titan 7 months after the first season concluded in Japan. And it was an immediate hit. It brought about 1.3 million viewers for each episode during its midnight time slot. And so it's hard to know who exactly is buying the Japanese copies, right? This data isn't necessarily just limited to people within Japan, and certainly there are people who understand and can read Japanese who are living outside of it. So maybe this is people who were watching it on Toonami and buying the copies, or maybe it was because just having Toonami pick up the series brought even more prestige to the series, meaning that more people wanted to read the manga in Japan. I don't know. Whoever the actual demographic of buying the copies, the reason for it is clear. It's that Attack on Titan became readily accessible to people outside of Japan. And that accessibility made it so that Attack on Titan's sales rivaled and in some cases even beat out The Walking Dead, which had been the best-selling comic series in the US at the time and had retained that position for a long time. And I watched Super Eye Patch Wolf's video on what made Attack on Titan so popular, and he had this hypothesis that it was a new take on zombies, which the US was obsessed with at the time. Of course, we had The Walking Dead, World War Z, zombies were everywhere in our entertainment. And it was also a new take on the kaiju, your Godzillas, your Mothras, your Rodans. which are creatures that are a cornerstone of Japanese entertainment. So it was this story that had unique appeal to both Western and Japanese culture, and was able to hit the cultural zeitgeist in both of those worlds. That may be the case. I thought that was an interesting theory. But I said I wasn't going to talk about the story in this video. This is all about external circumstances. Now, another thing to consider is that publisher rights in Japan are a bit different than how we think of them in the US. Because in Japan, the author is able to retain complete control over their story. That's totally different from in the US, where we see time and time again, like, the creator of Spider-Man, for example, being completely fucked over by Marvel. And Marvel can make millions and millions of dollars over Spider-Man, even though the original creator may no longer be associated with it. And in fact, the whole culture surrounding comic authors in Japan is way different from the US, as you would expect, because manga is just so much more popular there. Isayama, the author of Attack on Titan, is like a bona fide celebrity in Japan. And that's a status that very few comic authors and artists enjoy stateside. Like maybe Jack Kirby, maybe Alan Moore, definitely Stan Lee. But beyond those big names, a lot of people can't even really put a face to these people. As opposed to the US, manga publishers receive a very modest share of the licensing income. So for them, the anime serves primarily as comic book ads and drives a lot of their revenue. It's a key part in their revenue generating process. So why then would Attack on Titan's publisher throw such a valuable property like Attack on Titan to a fledgling animation studio like Wit Studio? Well, what if I told you that Attack on Titan's publisher didn't have a whole lot of faith in the series and didn't think it would be that successful? By the 2010s, anime had come firmly into the cultural zeitgeist, right? Thanks in large part to Toonami, back when it was owned by Cartoon Network. Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball, Naruto, Bleach. These are some of the biggest properties in the West, period, not just anime or manga. All of these shows aired on Cartoon Network in the Toonami block in the early 90s. They also all had manga that were coming out as the anime were running, so it was a self-perpetuating cycle. Manga sales drove anime viewership, and anime viewership drove manga sales, just as we're seeing with Attack on Titan nowadays. But there's another fact that unites these three manga specifically. Manga can largely be broken down into shonen and shoujo genres. To really simplify things, shoujo manga is typically aimed towards young girls, think Sailor Moon, Fruits Baskets, while shonen manga is typically aimed at young boys. And Dragon Ball, Bleach, and Naruto all fall under this genre, as does Attack on Titan. So Dragon Ball, Naruto, and Bleach were all published in the same manga magazine. It's called Weekly Shonen Jump, and it's huge in Japan. It's the best-selling and longest-running manga magazine in Japan by a long shot, and Japanese readers continue to tune in week after week to keep up with the stories within the pages of this magazine. Appearing in Shonen Jump is a big deal because it means that you have access to millions of readers. But it's also not guaranteed success because series can be completely dropped from Shonen Jump without any warning if they're not doing well, because the magazine has to make space for what might be the next Naruto or the next Bleach. Because of that ever-looming threat of cancellation, there's somewhat of a meta competition between the stories that appear in Shonen Jump to be the number one story of the magazine. And it's funny because the publisher sort of makes their internal ranking public in the form of their table of contents and like the order in which the stories appear in the magazine. So we as the public have full insight into who is at threat of cancellation and who is not. It's really cutthroat and kind of fascinating because you can see how that cancellation impacts the stories themselves. But that threat exists for good reason, because Shonen Jump has churned out mega hit after mega hit after mega hit. They know what the successful manga to anime pipeline looks like. They've perfected it. Almost every single shonen anime that has found success outside of Japan has come from the pages of Shonen Jump. In addition to Naruto, Bleach, and Dragon Ball, Shonen Jump has given us Demon Slayer, Death Note, Yu-Gi-Oh!, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Hunter x Hunter, My Hero Academia, One Piece, Black Clover, Haikyuu, Bakuman, Gintama, and so much more. but they didn't give us Attack on Titan. See, Isayama once submitted his work to Weekly Shonen Jump, but was rejected. So his story found a home in the much smaller Besatsu Shonen magazine. Now, for reference, Shonen Jump is a weekly magazine, and in 2018 had an estimated circulation of 1.74 million readers. Besatsu Shonen, on the other hand, is a monthly magazine, and in 2017 had an estimated circulation of only about 66,000 readers. So Attack on Titan had a much smaller reach. That cannot be underscored enough. And Attack on Titan's publisher Kodansha even credits Attack on Titan for the company's first revenue increase in 18 years. Kodansha, the publisher, and Besatsu Shonen magazine lucked out big time on Attack on Titan. The first issue of Attack on Titan was published in September 2009 in the first issue of Besatsu Shonen magazine. Let me connect the dots for you. It was an entirely new story in an entirely new magazine. So back to the question at hand. Why did the publisher Kodansha trust Wit Studio with Attack on Titan? Because Besatsu Shonen itself was a fledgling magazine. And no one could have ever predicted the mega sensation that Attack on Titan would become. Right? It's gotten to the point where Wit Studio cannot keep up with the demands for the show, so the production of Attack on Titan has been transferred to MAPPA, which is much more experienced and is a veteran in the animation studio. And look, there's some things that data can't explain. It's just crazy to think that if there had been more coordinated effort between Wit Studio and Kodansha, and if they had planned for more than one season of the anime, or I don't know, if Weekly Shonen Jump had initially accepted Isayama's first draft, then Attack on Titan might be even more successful than it is today. It's just when you look at the data and the history of Attack on Titan, there were so many things working against its success as a story. And despite it all, it's currently the second most popular anime on my anime list of all time, right after Death Note. And Attack on Titan isn't even done yet! The cultural impact of Isayama's story is undeniable. Attack on Titan has had a crossover with the Avengers, and it's currently at the center of a battle between Netflix and Hulu to become the go-to streaming site for anime. So even after the last issue comes out in April, and the last episode of the anime comes out whenever it will come out, Attack on Titan will continue to have an impact on the publishers, on animation studios, on streaming sites, on writers and illustrators, and of course, most of all, the fans. It's such a commendable achievement when you look at the extremely humble beginnings of both its creator and the story itself. But yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the popularity of Attack on Titan, and I do want to reiterate at the top, a big reason of why it's so popular is the story, even though I didn't touch on those aspects much in this video because, let's be honest, there's way too many of those types of videos on YouTube. But I did want to shout out Super Eye Patch Wolves because it is a really good video and it did inspire me to make this video. And side note, after going through the data of the top selling manga, there's like so many other deep dives that I wanted to do. Like One Piece has been like the undisputed king of manga for like years, basically since 2012. And then the absolute surreal rise of Demon Slayer in the past year has been crazy. And there's got to be more to the popularity of that series that I would love to do a look into as well. So if you're interested in either of those, or if there's another anime or manga that you would want me to look into, let me know. So fun fact, the website I scraped this data from, Oricon, is completely in Japanese. So I had to not only write code to be able to scrape the website, and also I had to use archived versions of the website for like going back to 2012 because those lists are no longer public on their website. I also had to write code to auto-translate the data into English and then correct those translations manually. And it was a ton of work. But now that I've done that, I'm able to use this data for more than just Attack on Titan. So please suggest any other anime or manga that you would want me to look into and use this data for, because I don't want all of those hours to go to waste. But yeah, as always, there will be a hint for what my next video is on at the end of this video. Please do consider liking and subscribing. It helps immensely, especially for a small channel like mine. I'm not saying that because I want more subscribers or I want a bigger channel, but I do put a lot of time and effort into this research, and I do want these videos to be seen by people, and the best way to get them seen by people is for y'all to interact with it. There's my little plea and call to action, but regardless, I will catch y'all in the next one. Bye!